The Tim Dillon Interview. Now, most people have covered this and done a much better job than I. I just wanted to focus on one part that I thought was kind of odd and characteristically hypocritical of CNN and liberal Democrats in general. But before I get to that, throughout this interview, Elle Reeve, CNN correspondent and agent provocateur, she's making this passive attempt to portray Joe Rogan, podcasts, stand-up comedy as this other, the outsider, the threat, by asking Tim to explain them. Now, maybe in her world these things are outsiders, because the mainstream media, at least the media that aligns with the DNC and liberals, have constantly tried to drum up people like Joe Rogan as a threat, a foil. And they've been super duper califragilisticexpialidociously good about it. Why? Because they're not going to run on policies that people want.
We choose freedom.
So they need a big bad villain. You better vote for us or else it's you-know-who. Remember that horse thing?
One of those drugs he mentioned, ivermectin, is something more often used to deworm horses.
Remember his stance on Bernie?
I think I'll probably vote for Bernie.
Better vote for the corporate guy who's part of the system that's screwing you over and not the radical healthcare nut. And the other side does the same thing with AOC, Jon Stewart, Pedro Pascal. So all she's doing is what's expected of her. But it makes her look foolish. You don't understand how comedy works? She asks him, what has being on Joe Rogan's podcast done for your career? Trying to make him sound like some soulless careerist when that's what everybody's trying to do. Build their brand, their career, make some money in this hellish landscape of an economic gladiatorial pit that we're in.
I wager 400 quattros on the newcomer.
What has being on Joe Rogan's podcast done for his career? What every person going on every show since the beginning of media has been hoping it would do?
Let me break it down for you so you understand. I'll hold your hand like a small child.
Tim's on Joe Rogan's podcast. If Joe Rogan fans don't like him, they won't bother with him. If they do like him, he's picked up some new followers, customers. Lady, you don't understand how this works? Your network does this exact same thing every time someone's got a new book about how great Hillary is, or how bad the boogeyman is, or what the Obamas are up to. It's why people go on talk shows, late night shows, do radio interviews. She looks young, I found out she's in her 40s, but I thought don't be too hard on her, maybe she really doesn't understand how the world works. Well, if that's true, then how'd you get a job at CNN? Maybe that's a requirement. So, in a couple side things, she keeps asking if he was skeptical. Were you skeptical about this or them? Was she? Was she skeptical about Kamala Harris, who had the most gallingly empty platform? Or Biden, who said openly racist comments in the Senate? Who advocated for the crime bill that to this day is warehousing America's poor, including disproportionately non-white people, but also a lot of whites? Was she skeptical of Obama, who ran on ending the wars and then expanded them? Is she skeptical of AOC, who ran on getting a floor vote on Medicare for all, then when she had a golden opportunity to do that after the 2020 midterms, panicked and did exactly what she was told by the Democratic establishment and got in her lane and said nothing? Or Bill Clinton and his job-destroying NAFTA in between trips to Pedo Island. You have no credibility. Now, this is the point I wanted to get to. Interesting that an interviewer for CNN, the media outlet that is widely considered to be aligned with the Democrats and feeds the news with a kind of bias tailored for their liberal-leaning audience, much in the same way Fox News crafts the news with a bias for their conservative-leaning crowd. Interesting this agent provocateur for CNN, an organization that seems in line with talking points of liberals, standing up for quote-unquote democracy and marginalized communities like LGBTQ community, would incite a sort of passive homophobia against Tim Dillon because she can't hold her own in a civil tete-a-tete with a mere podcaster. Not her words, but I'm guessing she views podcasters as beneath her. Now, I'll leave aside the homophobic baiting. I want to focus on the Rush Limbaugh comparison. She says or from a quote from a friend, that Tim Dillon is kind of a gay Rush Limbaugh. Rush Limbaugh was a self-admitted entertainer. But much of his audience took Rush's shtick as legitimate news analysis. And that's fine if you want to understand the complex world we live in through a series of conservative bumper stickers. As Reinhold Niebuhr, American theologian, inspirational guru to the political elites of the 60s and 70s once said, we need to impose emotionally potent oversimplifications on the common people in order to control them. Well, that pretty much sums up Rush Limbaugh's entire process. You see, Rush was more of an actor. Tim Dillon is a comedian. Although also an entertainer, Tim is more of a comedian in the traditional sense of societal observer and critiquing society's problems. Much like George Carlin, Richard Pryor, and Bill Hicks, who came before him. Rush and Tim Dillon are not at all similar. And I don't know what being gay has to do with any of it. Her comment not only being a pathetic attempt at a cheap shot, it also exposed the fraudulent nature of mainstream media. They don't believe in any of these social issues that they claim to. And this is as true with Fox as it is with CNN and MSNBC. They merely cloak themselves in this false virtuousness because it appeals to their audience. And deep down, they know that they're craven, mediocre, and this probably makes them feel a little bit better about themselves. Let's face it, she did not do her homework. She didn't watch his show. If she did, she would have known what his feelings were about tech oligarchs, and maybe could have formulated a more insightful question than, "What do you feel about tech oligarchs?" Good job, Tim. This Nepo intern thought she could go toe-to-toe with a heavyweight. But no worries. Rich kids get the best healthcare in the world. Enjoy your medical debt.
It's a big club, and you ain't in it. You and I are not in the big club.